How's it going, everyone? It's Caleb Limited here, and today we are going to be talking about Matchbox Driving Adventures on the Xbox Series X. Now, I am a collector of toy cars. I like to collecting pretty much any or all die-cast cars. I collect Hot Wheels, I collect Matchbox, I collect, Spin Master. I collect basically any of them that I find cool. So, Matchbox is definitely one of the brands that I collect, and when I heard that they were releasing a Matchbox video game, I got pretty excited because there's not many Matchbox video games that I know of. The only ones that I really know of other than this one were just a couple that came out on the Game Boy Advance. So not a whole lot of Matchbox console games, so I was pretty excited when I heard that they were coming out with this. It is made by Outright Games, and Outright Games doesn't do big budget title games. A lot of their stuff definitely feels a little bit cheaper. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, though. They have made some good games in the past. This one, I would say, is just an okay game, though. It's not perfect, it's not great, however, it does have some fun. So let's go ahead and talk about the fun that you can have with Matchbox racing or driving adventures. So, first we're going to talk about the actual main adventure mode. The main adventure mode in this has quite a few different levels that you get to play through. You have your regular races, which honestly I think the regular races are probably the most fun thing to do in this game. So you do have those. You also have these missions where you're chasing down a car that's like doing something bad. Like it will say like there's this car causing fires or something like that, and you basically have to go bump into that car so many times, and if you bump into the car, the right a number of times, then you will defeat that level. There's some levels that are objective based where you're supposed to like go put out fires and you're supposed to go take characters to an ambulance and things like that, and that may sound kind of exciting, but it's actually not at all. So anytime it says, oh, go pick up a patient and take him to the hospital, or anytime it says go put out a fire, you're not actually really doing anything. All you're doing is just driving to a red dot that's on the map, and once you hit the red dot, it just tells you to go somewhere else, and that's basically all of those objective based modes. That's all they are. So even though it may sound fun, it's just literally driving to different points on the map over and over and over again without actually seeing any of the things happen. I guess I will say this, for where there's fire, at least you do see fire on the map, but you just hit the red dot and the fire just immediately goes away, so it's really not that exciting. So those modes aren't great. I much more prefer the actual races and the actual mode where you're chasing the other cars and just trying to knock them out. So that stuff I like. And I will say, when I say knock them out, there's not really any damage to the other vehicles either, so it's just really just bumping into them and no actual damage. They just have a health bar that goes down. Or up, I guess in this case. You have a health bar that goes up, because it shows how many times you hit them is how it works. One of the biggest problems with this game is the lack of cars. There's really not a whole lot of cars to choose from. It does give you a decent variety in terms of just each car looks very different from one another, but it doesn't give you a whole lot to choose from. It gives you a lot of paint jobs for each car, which is nice, but I would have liked to see more cars in this game. Another thing that I thought was kind of odd is that these days Matchbox makes a lot of licensed vehicles, and there's not really any licensed vehicles in this game. That was also kind of odd to see, because usually non-licensed vehicles these days go to Hot Wheels, so it's kind of weird to see a Matchbox game that doesn't have any licensed vehicles. I didn't expect there to be any, if I'm being honest, because I knew that they weren't going to pay for the licensing, but it kind of just makes this feel like a racing game that just kind of has Matchbox slapped on the name of it, because this really doesn't feel like anything Matchbox, or it doesn't even feel like it has anything Matchbox related to it. It just feels like this is a racing game and they just happen to throw a label on it, so that's not great either. And graphically, graphics don't matter a whole lot. I've always said that, but this game really, it's not pretty. It's not a pretty game. I don't even want to call it PS2 graphics, because I feel like that's an insult to the PS2, if I'm being completely honest. Like, it looks very lazily done, and I hate to say that because I don't really want to bash this game, because I don't hate this game, but it's also just not that great. It's just an okay game that definitely feels like it was a bit cash grabby, and that's unfortunate, because I was really hoping that this would be good. But on the bright side, there is one decent thing about this game that I can actually say is, a positive. It actually has a decent track selection. The tracks actually are pretty well built. I like the difference in them. I like the different environments. I like the actual tracks themselves. I think that stuff is actually pretty well done, and I enjoy it. You have volcano levels, you have snow levels, you have some sandy levels, so you have a bit of different environments going on, and I feel like each course is a lot of fun to race on. There's one where you get to go through like a crystal mine. So there's neat ideas here and some neat races. Does that make for a great game, though, just because it has a few good levels? Don't know if I'd go that far. Because the racing itself, even, the actual controls and everything, it doesn't control amazing. You can definitely tell that it's a budget racing game even when you're playing it, because it doesn't feel as good as some of the other racing games that you'll probably play. Like, if you've played the Burnout games, those feel 100 times better than this one. If you've played the Pixar car games, those feel better than this one. You know, this definitely feels like a budget title, so even when you're doing the racing, you're going to notice that. Like, if you play Hot Wheels, any of the Hot Wheels games, the new ones or the old ones, this one doesn't feel as good as those. So, it's noticeable. It's noticeable that this is definitely not a high-end racing experience. So who is Matchbox Driving Adventures really even for at this point? Because it's not really for Matchbox fans, and I don't really feel like it's for their average racing enthusiast. I feel like this is probably just a game for kids. I mean, after all, it is published by Outright Games, and they usually do make games focused for kids, and that's kind of their target audience. But I was hoping for something special from the Matchbox series, because we just don't get many Matchbox games, so it did have me excited when I saw it, but unfortunately, I was definitely not their target audience with this game. Their audience, they're after a younger audience, and I don't know if the younger audience would even be here for this, because I don't know if a younger audience would honestly even care about Matchbox, if I'm being honest. I feel like that brand recognition kind of is more for the older audience. Maybe they're thinking, oh, people who are, were kids who grew up with Matchbox, now they have kids and they can buy a Matchbox game for their kids. Maybe that's what they're thinking. I don't know. But either way, they're betting on you buying it for kids is what I feel like they're doing. And that's a strategy, but it doesn't make for a good video game, unfortunately. So this game overall, I have to say, I do not recommend it. I wish I could. I really do. I was very excited to finally see another Matchbox video game after all these years. But it's not good. It's no bueno. So unfortunately, I'm going to say you should probably pass on Matchbox Driving Adventures. Unless you can get it for like less than $10, it's probably not worth picking up. And I'm saying this as someone who is a fan of Matchbox. If you are looking to buy a racing game for your kid, I do not recommend picking up Matchbox Driving Adventures. There are way better racing games that kids could play. Cars 3 Driven to Win is a way better racing game than this one. I would recommend that over this. I would recommend Hot Wheels Monster Trucks. That game is fantastic. It's not really a racing game, it's more of a stunt game. But it is a way better game than this. It controls better, it looks better, and it just is higher quality. There's a lot of better racing games than this. Even the Hot Wheels Unleashed games, even though those are a little bit more complicated and they're harder to control, I think a kid would have a better time with that game than they would this game, if I'm being honest. So I recommend those games over this one. Unfortunately, this one's kind of a dud. It's not terrible, but it's also just not great. Overall, it's a pretty disappointing, mediocre game that is really just made for kids and made for parents who don't know any better. So don't get this for your kid. Get them something better. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe button down below, and I will see you in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.